to Grid Live Wrap Up. We have a lot of racing to talk about, especially with New Hampshire, Washington, D.C., and Virginia. We had the Dutch Grand Prix, Supercars in Queensland. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up. I am Joe Samiego, and with me we have Kobe Lambert, host of Grid Tonight, and Matthew Bro, host of Grid Rising and GridNetworkTV.com. Article coming up shortly later on the website, and of course Isha Bashwa's IndyCar recap will be coming up later as well today too. A big thank you to our investors: Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, Nico, Adam, Mango, and Patrick, our two newest ones. The list keeps growing. Encourage everyone, check out our Patreon page or invest through a YouTube paid membership right here. And of course, Jamie leads when it comes to one-time contributions through Super Chat and Buy Me a Coffee. And already we see Jamie is in the chat room. Thank you for tuning in, Jamie, from Lake Norman, North Carolina. And of course, North Carolina, home of NASCAR. And let's start with NASCAR, Matthew. Cup Series at New Hampshire Speedway. Saw the start moved up, but we still had a rain delay, damp, wet conditions, and thankfully sunshine by the end of the race. So we got the full race distance in, which I was relieved about. We saw this race really evolve very interestingly with the wet conditions early on. Cars going super low, super high, avoiding that middle. But then as the track dried up, we saw everyone going back to the usual grooves. We saw some cars that were up towards the front fall towards the back, and some that were towards the back come towards the front. At the end of the day, Ryan Blaney, he had to come from the back after a poor pit stop to the front, overcame that issue, held up a hard-charging Bubba Wallace, who with 2 laps to go locked up the tires. That took him out of contention, and a hard-charging Josh Berry, who was very strong all day. Damp conditions, dry conditions, super aggressive. I have to ask you, was this one of the best races we've seen here at New Hampshire?
I mean, yes and no, I guess. You could say it was one of the best. I think it was a great race for sure, especially every time there was like a silly caution or whatever that had come out, there was always a nice restart battle for the lead. And then especially there wasn't enough cautions, at least earlier in this event, to have, I guess, like those long runs where the guys like Josh Berry came out of nowhere. Guys like Bubba Wallace seemed to have long run cars. Guys like Ryan Blaney had to make their way through the field. I think stuff like that made it a really good event for sure, especially Ryan Blaney winning stage 2 and then having that pit road issue, had to make his way back up. Tyler Reddick and Denny Hamlin on lap 1 of this event. Reddick spun and then Hamlin almost made contact with him, but still was involved in the caution technically. So having them make their way back up through the field was pretty cool. And just, yeah, I think it was great. There have been some fun ones in recent memory. I think even the one with Christopher Bell a couple of years ago, the rain one was pretty fun to watch. New Hampshire is one of those tracks that I've always enjoyed. My first ever NASCAR event was in Nationwide race at the time, I think 2012. So New Hampshire, I guess, has a nice part of my heart there to be able to see this track continue, at least to have one date per year, which hopefully they can continue that out. I have always enjoyed this track, but there's been some fun ones. I'd argue even the one that Almirola won a few years ago was kind of chaotic fun, especially when that late race caution came out because it got too dark. I was worried if it kept raining, they were going to have something similar in this event, but they didn't. So yeah, just shout out, Ryan Blaney, another masterful performance. He is without a doubt a threat to win the championship again. And I think that battle between him and Denny Hamlin is going to be really fun to watch. And you could even throw Ty Gibbs in there, was quiet in this event, still finished inside the top 10, almost another top 5 for Ty Gibbs. So the championship, what they're setting up for the Chase, Joe, that's going to be really fun to watch. And I'm glad New Hampshire, I think, is it next year they might get a Chase race, but this year for now they're at least towards the end of the regular season, which I'm okay with either or, as long as they're like really close to the Chase or right around the start of the Chase.
Yeah, near the Chase, I think is a great spot for this track, and early on in the Chase as well. Got to give a shout out to the fans that all stuck around there. It looked so miserable that first part of the day, and they're just all in their whether it was ponchos, umbrellas, just trying to stay dry. And then they got a pretty entertaining race. I really enjoyed the aspect of seeing the cars on the wet tires, working their way. Surprised that Tyler Reddick, that first lap spin did not take anybody out. I just thought this is a big one, but everybody kept going. So overall, this was just one of those races. And like you point out, some of those past races where it seems like this track has really evolved from a track where people have said, oh, New Hampshire is a one groove, maybe two, to now it's like it's a physical track. It is a lot of good racing lately. And I think this is one where I gotta say, if you haven't been to New Hampshire and you want to visit that state, plan around a NASCAR race. I think that'll be really great to see because this track has seemed to have great action, and I think this is a good spot, either right before the chase or near the early in this chase. In the chat room, Hocevar almost caused a horrible day for Gano. Thankfully, he recovered at least partially. Hocevar just seems to be a little bit of a slump as we're getting to the chase, and SVG had his issues today, it seemed. Overall, I know we'll talk about SVG a little later in the program, but I want to bring up about Carlson Hocevar. This slump he seems to be having lately, including what happened in Richmond. Here, could a strong race at Daytona just reset everything, or do you think it's just going to be more, because we sometimes see if you're on a slump, it doesn't matter. You get to Darlington, if you're in a slump, you're still going to be in that slump.
Yeah, it's tough with Hocevar. I think he's proved he can win on super speedways, obviously, at Talladega, and he did pretty damn well at Daytona. Echo Park, he finished third. So I know he's in a slump where he's got like the 37th at Richmond, the 31st at Iowa, and just other races after that. But people forget, like I also forgot. I mean, he was third at Echo Park. He was ninth at Indy, top 20 after spinning 3 times today, including once before the race. So Hocevar, without a doubt, he's in a slump compared to what we saw early on in that season when he was ripping off top 5s, top 10s week in and week out, where he was 5th in the standings, and then he's had a very dramatic fall. But he has clinched a spot in the chase. Obviously, him and Daniel Suarez will be representing Spire Motorsports. So I think we've been asking the same question every week. Will a win change, or will a good race change the momentum for Hocevar? It probably will, but we've asked that question multiple times after, I guess, the whole, where was it? After the whole Iowa debacle. So we asked that, do you think he can do well at Richmond? Then he had a bad race at Richmond. Now we're like, do you think he could do well at New Hampshire? Then he doesn't do great at New Hampshire. Now we're like, should he do well at Daytona? So I think the chase will be an absolute reset for Carson Hocevar, and I'm sure he'll be fine. I think their goal is probably top 10 in the standings, and I think realistically they could get there. They just have to really turn it around. But luckily, I think, was there another Talladega coming up? They'll be fine there. He's obviously good at Daytona heading into the chase with momentum, and he's pretty good at a lot of the intermediate tracks that are also coming up. So Carson Hocevar will be fine most likely, but yeah, a lot of bad mojo going on for him. Even if he finishes well, he's still, something's happening on track, whether he's spinning or getting into it with somebody. Obviously today, him and Connor Zilic weren't really great friends, but that whole thing was just kind of funny. And then Joey Logano calling him an idiot when he spun out during the pre-race stuff, and then coming back in and then spinning out on his own. Just, yeah. So Hocevar, there's a hole he's got to dig out of, but he'll be fine. He's one of those guys I think that can turn it on very quickly, and I'm sure he will.
I think Hocevar, Daytona is a great opportunity for him. Just rebound, and then Darlington enter a little bit strong. It's going to be very interesting because he seems to always have the pace. Just a matter of something going wrong, the contact today, everything with Logano. If he could have a clean race, I think he could quickly rebound. One driver, I have to say, Denny Hamlin. You talk about what we've seen from him all season long. Well, he has secured the number 1 seeding in the chase, so he's going to be the number 1. Bubba Wallace, with his strong performance today, 14th in the points. And Josh Berry, who really ran strong, moved to 29th in the points. Out of the chase contention, obviously. There's no way you're in, so can't pull that off. But he's been having some strong races, consecutive top 10 finishes, a mark the Wood brothers have not achieved since 1994 with Morgan Shepherd. And we know Josh Berry's going to be out of a ride next year. Are Josh Berry's recent performances enough to potentially get him a ride in the Cup Series full-time in 2027?
I think for Josh Berry, absolutely. If you're taking this Wood Brothers car that really hasn't done much of anything, quite frankly, since I know they've won races here and there with this format that locked them into the points or into the playoffs at the time that they never would have made it anyway. This car really hasn't done anything since Ryan Blaney era, to be honest with you. Matt DiBenedetto did pretty well too, but for Berry to go back to back to back to back top 10s for the first time in his NASCAR Cup Series career, and then obviously their first time with Wood Brothers since Morgan Shepherd in 94, like you had mentioned, that's pretty damn impressive. And I think absolutely he deserves a chance at the Cup Series. He is getting older, though, obviously. He's 35 years old. He'll be obviously 36 next year. So if you're a Cup Series team, do you want to take a chance on Josh Berry, he's a seasoned race car veteran for sure, with now 3 years of Cup experience? Do you want to take a chance on him, or would you rather go with one of the younger guys that you could build your team throughout for the next decade, as opposed to however long Berry's career is? I think Josh Berry is one of those drivers. I've said it about Josh Berry. I've said it about Cole Custer, John Hunter Nemechek, Noah Gragson. These are all guys that I think could have like Justin Allgaier careers if they stayed full-time in O'Reilly in the top tier equipment when they were competing and winning a bunch of races, even championships with guys like Cole Custer, stuff like that. But Berry proves that he's capable of driving when the car is set up right. And I think when Penske hits on all cylinders, or hits on all marks, I should say, Wood Brothers Racing also does. But it sucks for Josh Berry. Obviously, the Wood Brothers car really has not been anywhere near a top tier Ford, even if it has that technical alliance with Penske. So for him, I think he's done enough to get a ride. I know people said there's rumors that if Austin Hill doesn't end up in the 33, that Josh Berry might be one of those guys. Other than that, I mean, besides Hill, Berry really is the only driver I think that has been even rumored to be in the 33 if he keeps a Cup ride. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out. I think two of the most interesting silly season things coming up are where Austin Hill ends up and where Josh Berry ends up, because obviously Gragson's staying, which I thought there was a rumor that if Gragson were to leave and not get the 4 car, he might end up in RCR, but then that would leave front row a chance for either Josh Berry or Lane Riggs. So I'm ultimately curious about the silly season for a lot of these guys, but Berry and obviously Hill being one of them. But Berry's done enough, in my opinion, to be a Cup Series guy. But that's not up to us ultimately, is it, Joe? It's up to whatever money he can find. I know he doesn't really bring a lot of sponsorship money. That's why, luckily, Wood Brothers has Ford and Motorcraft and all the Penske Alliance sponsors to be on that car. So hopefully Berry gets it, but we'll see ultimately at the end of the year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all shapes up for Josh Berry. I think he has the potential. He's shown what he can do out there. Just a matter of getting those results, because I feel last year he had some strong races, but something would go wrong and just the inconsistency. But it was at this race last year, he really brought the battle, but just came up short. So again, I think he has the potential. He's a good racer. Just a matter of putting it all together and having a solid finish, because that's the big key to get yourself into the chase. And I mean, still to say you moved up 29th in the points is like, I mean, that shows the kind of season they have been having, but they could keep up this streak. It'll be really interesting to see what the Wood Brothers could do. They got Daytona. That's a track where anything could happen. So we'll see if they can make it another consecutive top 10 finish. And overall, for the Wood Brothers, I'm just looking at just some of the big picture accomplishments they have to say. All these top 10 finishes has to feel really good. So I'm just excited to see that Josh Berry's again have some good races and showing some competitiveness as well. So going from the top to outside, let's go to the bottom of the chase. Shane Van Gisbergen, 31 points above the cut line from Ryan Prix. Brad Keselowski is 66 points below. I mean, he would need to sweep the stages, win Daytona, and have SVG essentially not start to collect any points. So So really, it's Prix and SVG for that final 16th spot. You still have Cindric, who is 15th and is 44 points above the cut line. So if he was to finish dead last and Ryan Prix was to win and SVG got stage points, there could be more shakeup, but it'll be a lot. These three drivers are going to be following to see what could happen. But we know SVG is in the situation where no other Trackhouse driver is going to be in the chase. Connor Zillage, not going to be in it. After today, Ross Chastain, not going to be in it. What do you think are SVG's chances of getting into the chase for the second consecutive year and ensuring Trackhouse has at least one car in the postseason?
I think they're pretty good. Shane has figured it out. NASCAR, at least. I know people are like, oh, he still hasn't won on an oval or super speedway. But he's come pretty damn close multiple times. So I think Shane Van Gisbergen never has gotten enough credit that he deserves for how talented he is as a motorsports driver. But it's a very steep climb. Regardless, you could make up 40 points on a guy in a race if they have an issue and you don't. But at the same time, going to Daytona, you know there's going to be probably 7-8 DNFs, which likely could be a Shane Van Gisbergen. It could be an Austin Cindric. It could be a Ryan Prix getting caught up in something. I feel like Ryan Prix has the absolute worst luck coming at these speedways, while a guy like Austin Cindric seems to have very good luck. So I think the real battle, like you mentioned, I find it very, very hard to believe that Brad Keselowski can make it in. I really don't think he will. But that's a harmful thing to the organization, RFK Racing, especially. Obviously, they can't find a third charter. Rumors that they're just going to run Prix full-time anyway without a charter. Obviously, it costs teams a lot of money, even if Kroger throws in all the money in the world. But for Shane, I do feel very confident. If he misses the chase, there has got to be conversations about Trackhouse Racing and what steep fall they have had dramatically, going from 6 wins last season, at least 6, I think. Right? I think didn't Ross win 1 and Shane had 5, and then even the season before winning multiple races. But Ross's fall off is truly sad to watch. I know. And then plus, obviously, we're going to touch on Connor Zillage. You're losing him in 2 years. None of your guys are under contract at the end of next season. So it's like, what the hell is going on at Trackhouse Racing? So I think Shane really needs to just go out there and be Shane Van Gisbergen, and he should make it. I'm curious with Ryan Prix. I believe there's only 6 points in the Owners' Championship between the 97 and the 60. So it is very likely that Ryan Prix can get that RFK number 60 in the chase, but Trackhouse Racing might miss the chase with the 97. So that's something I'm very interested in seeing. And it's all because of that damn 25-point penalty that Ryan Prix had that literally is about to come back and bite him in the behind. So very unfortunate for Trackhouse Racing, but I'm sure they'll be fine. I am very concerned about Cindric. This is like the the second week maybe in a row, or at least one. No, he did really well at Richmond, but there's been a couple weeks where Penske has gone out there and put belt to butt, and Cindric is just chilling in the mid-20s or 30s, just minding his business. So I'd be worried about Cindric come chase time if he can make up any ground on anyone. But yeah, that's my long answer, Joe. I think SVG has a really good chance over Ryan Prix just based on the way Daytona is, but something can change on lap 1, as you saw at New Hampshire. So you never really know until that checkered flag flies at 10 p.m., 11 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday night.
And I find it sort of almost in a way the storyline that I was setting up at Daytona, where we know Ryan Prix in Daytona, I mean, he has the astronaut profile picture because of what has happened to him at Daytona. When we started the NASCAR bracket challenge at Sonoma, it was SVG versus Ryan Prix, in which Ryan Prix was just like, it's over. Posted that meme. So here we are coming to Daytona, and it's like, okay, anything could happen. I mean, both of them know how to race well, and the track is just, if that big one bites you and you're in the wrong place, wrong time, oh man. I think Trackhouse was going to make sure SVG is getting all the preferred setup and everything, and, I think the team probably will be known like, hey, if you could help SVG, help him. Because looking at SVG, 20th today, 30th at Iowa, 25th at Chicagoland, 31st at Pocono. 36 after Pocono is like, there's a lot of races where he's been struggling. The big thing is the 2 wins. But then when you look at the rest of Trackhouse racing, well, 88 don't have any wins. We just know that's the case. And then car number 1, Ross Chastain, no wins since the Coca-Cola 600. It's just, again, you look at Ross Chastain results, 36 today, Indianapolis 23rd, North Wilkesboro 27th, Nashville 37th, Charlotte 35th. It's just, this team has just not getting it done, and it'll be interesting to see if they could get one car in the chase. I feel like that'll be a huge boost for them, and at the same time, we got to watch out what's going to happen in Daytona with this brand new package for Aero. So it'll be interesting to see how this all sets up at Daytona. 2 big crashes I want to highlight. William Byron, tire came loose, hit the wall. He kept going, which surprised me. But then we saw Riley Herbst. Him and Michael McDowell got into each other. He got the worst end of it. And Connor Zilisch locked up the tires and just went sliding right in. And of course, he had another finish outside the top 30 as well. So Trackhouse, we've been talking about how they're just not having that good day with Chastain, 36. Connor Zilisch, this driver just does not seem to have any sort of good luck, 35th. So SVG started off towards the front, was doing great, leading when the track was damp. But then as the track dried out, we saw the pace of that car, and it just didn't exactly have it. But I have to ask this, because, of course, we all know the big news about Connor Zilisch going to Hendrick Motorsports. Do you think that could have played a distraction at all with this team this weekend?
I don't think maybe this weekend, Joe, but I think overall, I feel like this is like one of the worst kept secrets that finally came out. Like, I think all of us, as soon as Alex Bowman was like, "Oh, I'm retiring at the end of next year," I think every single one of us was like, "Yeah, Connor Zilisch is going to that 48. There's really no way." None of us believed they were going to put Corey Day in that car. So, yeah, I'm curious if that's going to affect Connor Zilisch and his relationship with Trackhouse for the rest of this year and then the rest of next year. I don't really know if it will. I think Trackhouse is more in that desperate need of like, we just need anyone to run good. We're okay if Connor runs good. I mean, they were one of the first organizations to really give him a chance when he signed that development deal with them. So I think they still love Zilisch regardless. And I think if you're anyone on Trackhouse Racing or any team really, if Mr. H comes calling, you're probably going to go over there unless you're a Team Penske driver or unless you're maybe a Joe Gibbs Racing driver. You're probably going to take that call, especially if you're from Front Row or Trackhouse or just any of those organizations in the, I guess, lower on the totem pole of racing, right? But yeah, I don't think it really distracted him this race weekend. I just think it was bad luck. I mean, Connor Zilisch kind of ARCA braked it into Riley Herbst. I'm not sure if he had a brake issue or not, but he kept calling himself stupid and dumb on the radio. So it makes me think that was more of a driver thing than a mechanical thing. Ross Chastain on lap 40, 42, just nothing he really could have done with that car blowing up on him. And then Shane, obviously he led, was it near 30 laps in this event? So pretty damn good start, obviously qualified 5th. Did everything he needed to do and then just kind of faded into oblivion once the green flag stop started. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Trackhouse Racing. This was an organization at the start of the year. We were all like, what the heck is even going on with them? And then it went, oh, my God, look at Shane winning 2 races, running up front, leading laps, almost winning on ovals. Ross Chastain every once in a while shows how good he can be as a driver when the car's not doing terrible. And then Connor Zilisch really hasn't shown much of anything. He had obviously promise at Watkins Glen and promise at Coronado, and then that big wreck, and then losing a tire. So the bad luck for Connor Zilisch is something I think we're going to study for years to come, especially this rookie season. Obviously, one of the most highly touted prospects we've ever seen in NASCAR, at least in this the 21st century, I would say. Connor Zilisch is in the top 3 of highest touted prospects, and having one of the worst rookie seasons ever in this sport. So he'll figure it out once he gets in that 48 car, but I think he's going to continue to struggle. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I think this is more of a small minor distraction for everything, not just, I don't think that really affected them this weekend though. I think this was just if something could go wrong, it went wrong. It happens with a lot of teams. It happens a lot with Trackhouse, it seems like, though.
Yeah, too often it seems it's happening to Trackhouse, and I get an idea that, this might be something where it's like, okay, there's going to be some distractions here and there, but I think that team is at a caliber where it's like they could get it done. But I just wonder if SVG does not make the playoffs, is this a team, the Chase, if this is a team that will just rally, it's like, let's just go out there and try to get wins and be more aggressive and do better, or will they even just fall further behind, which I almost feel like that seems to be the most likely case. We'll see what happens with Trackhouse Racing as we get ready for Daytona, the next round in the NASCAR Cup Series race, and of course the last race of the regular season. Then the Chase is back, and this time we have stage points, so it will be very fun to see how this all changes between stage 1, stage 2, and then the final stage, and then who's in the Chase and who is not in the Chase. And of course, Matthew, thank you so much for your time as always. We know you're going to be busy with the article plus Grid Rising. So before we let you go, what is your shining moment?
Oof, that's a good one. I think a lot of cool things happened over on the supercar side of things. Not to spoil a lot, but Will Brown finally, when they don't have a restrictor on that car, he seems to be back to Will Brown. But obviously, I think Penske, in terms of Blaney and Berry, did well in this event, especially Josh Berry's without a doubt a shining moment. I would say even Bubba Wallace, who's been falling from the just anything can go wrong for him goes wrong, but for him to run second, pretty good. I did see a Toyota thing they sent out I wanted to read, which I thought was pretty fascinating. And I know Toyota is a shining moment a lot, and now I kind of realize why. So looking at this, I'm reading this from Toyota specifically. It says Bubba Wallace's second place finish extended Toyota's streak to 13 straight second place finishes, which is every race since the All-Star race in Dover back in May. Additionally, a Toyota driver has finished first or second in 22 of 24 races this season, with Talladega in April and Watkins Glen in May as the only events where a Toyota Camry did not occupy one of the top 2 finishing positions. That is pretty damn impressive. I think that deserves a light for sure. The fact that Toyota has had a first or second place finisher in over 95% of the events, give or take my math on that one. But just overall, pretty good day for them. 5 of the top 10 were all Toyotas in this event, as well as I'm trying to think. The grid ranking, obviously occupied by all Toyotas on the NASCAR side for over a month now, I think. So just overall, they're firing on all cylinders, and obviously Denny Hamlin clinching the 1 seed 1 race before the regular season finale. That's another tip of the cap. But yeah, those are my shining moments. But if you had to say them all, I think Will Brown and Ampol, the 888 racing over there in New Zealand, Australia area, those guys I think deserve a lot of recognition from this race weekend.
Yeah, big race weekend for the Ampol 888. And of course, Matthew Bro of Grid Network TV and Grid Rising, thank you so much for your time. We'll bring in Kobe now we have IndyCar over at Washington, D.C. for the first time, the Freedom 250.
Yeah, that's right. And the Freedom 250 Grand Prix almost lasted 3 hours as the historic race took place in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and at the podium with the U.S. Capitol building. In the background, Kirkwood took the win in dominating fashion. The District of Columbia also had a bald eagle up there with him. And Kirkwood ended up calling this one of his biggest accomplishments of his career, considering how dominant he was. Nobody had anything for him today, and the closest was Scott McLaughlin, but he crashed out on a restart in a desperate move trying to overtake Kirkwood. That was really the only chance anyone had to beat Kyle Kirkwood today was Scott McLaughlin, hoping to make it stick and get out in front of that clean air. But even then, Kirkwood probably was still tracking that. He was just insanely fast. And the Andretti Global driver gained 42 points on Alex Palou, who finished 20th after a really horrible, uncharacteristic day for Palou and this number 10 Chip Ganassi Racing Honda team, because Palou had a penalty in the pits. Then he had a bad pit stop, and then he ended up hitting the right side of the wall and spinning out and tearing off the front nose cone. And after a terrible day for Palou, now the points lead for him is down to 91 between him and Kyle Kirkwood. And looking at the rest of the IndyCar schedule, got 3 races left, 2 race weekends. Got the Milwaukee Mile doubleheader, and then the season finale at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. And Andretti Global, they've really been on it lately, Joe, because they are now on a 2-race winning streak after winning on the streets of Markham with Marcus Ericsson, and now the District of Columbia with Kyle Kirkwood. So when we're looking at Kyle Kirkwood's championships, how critical will the Milwaukee Mile be? I mean, Alex Palou, he's no longer an average oval racer. He's figured out the ovals quite well, and he can now win on the oval tracks. But like, how important will it be for Kyle Kirkwood to go out there and sweep Milwaukee? And I know it may be difficult for him because you got Joseph Newgarden and David Malukas, who are really great on ovals as well.
Yeah, with David Malukas, Joseph Newgarden, they're just going to go out there and get wins for, especially David Malukas, there's any hope of having a shot at this championship. So I think those are going to be 2 drivers that are going to be in the mix. When it comes to Pato O'Ward, he'll be in the mix. So that's 3 great drivers that Alex Palou and Kyle Kirkwood are going to have to contend with. And like you said, Alex Palou, he knows how to get the job done now in the ovals. This is going to be a huge deal for Kyle Kirkwood if he wants to claim his first NTT IndyCar Series championship, because he's going to have to go out there and really outperform Alex Palou. That is something we have not seen really from Kyle Kirkwood when it comes to the ovals and when it comes to Honda compared to Chevrolet. So I think he is going to have an uphill battle. Qualifying and practice, I think, are going to be 2 key indicators of where he and that team stand. If I'm at Ready Global right now, I'm looking at what can we do to just give him the best opportunity to go out there, because it's going to be one of those race weekends where you got Saturday and then Sunday, 2 races, and then really it's going to come down to the last race. So you need to be very strong Saturday to have a good showing, gain more points, and then Sunday you sort of have an idea of like, okay, this is how much we gain, this is how much more we need to gain. And I think that's going to be the key strategy, is looking at where do we qualify compared to Alex Palou. I wouldn't say they should go into the approach of we're focused on racing against Alex Palou, because still there's a shot they could get the win. Other things could happen. I mean, we are talking a small oval, so the lap times are really quick. But this is something where I think they're going to be paying attention to where Alex Palou is, where they are, because at the end of the day, if Alex Palou is ahead of them towards the end of both races, then they're going to have a big uphill battle, even if it's not clinched by the time we get to Laguna Seca. But they have to be better than Alex Palou, and I feel like that is going to be a test for Kyle Kirkwood and that team.
Yeah, I think that would be the greatest test so far of his IndyCar career, to try to, put together 2 great races. I think that if Kyle Kirkwood wants a realistic chance of going to Laguna Seca with a chance of winning this championship, he's going to need Alex Palou to have 2 Washington, D.C.-like races at Milwaukee. He's going to need to have, I think this weekend in Washington, D.C., I think this was probably Alex Palou's worst IndyCar race of his career so far. And he'll need to put up 2 more of those at the Milwaukee Mile. Just have the worst weekend ever for Kirkwood to be able to do this, and for Kirkwood to get back in the fight, he's gonna have to sweep the weekend, which is a tall task, and have Palou have bad luck, and then it will be game on for the season finale. So it'll be interesting to see if Kyle Kirkwood can rise to the occasion. I know he doesn't necessarily like being called king of the streets, but when you look at all of his IndyCar wins, he's only won on street course except for 1 race when he won at Gateway. I believe it was last summer. In which he got his first oval win. But Kyle Kirkwood, he's really good on the street circuits, and he's still, although he has a short oval win on his resume, he's gonna have to get some more and continue to stack those points and improve himself as an all-around IndyCar driver, which I think he is. He just lacking wins on enough wins on the other style of racetracks, but it's certainly gonna be an uphill battle for him, as the Milwaukee Mile is gonna be extremely critical for him. I feel like Kyle Kirkwood is really gonna have to go out there and show up and show out, and have Alex Palou have a miserable weekend. And now looking at the top 4 in the standings, they're still mathematically alive. We got Palou, Kirkwood, Christian Lundgaard, and David Malukas. Lundgaard finished 2nd in DC, but Malukas had a DNF after crashing out early. He said his head hasn't been in the right space, and he's making mistakes more often. And looking at His last 3 races finishes are 12th, 17th, and 24th. And Malukas is on the verge of being mathematically eliminated from championship contention. So, Joe, do you view the Milwaukee doubleheader as a must-win situation for David Malukas?
It is looking like a must-win situation because he's right there on that verge of being eliminated. The most points somebody can score in an NTT IndyCar Series race weekend is 54 points. That's when you get the win, you lead a lap, you lead the most laps, and you get the pole. All those bonus points add up. Last place is going to get 5 points. So 49 points is the maximum you could gain on somebody. So David Malukas, he really needs to go out there, get those maximum points, and he's going to need Alex Palou to have bad luck. I don't see that situation playing out in David Malukas' favor, because even if he is going to be up there running strong, he's running against Joseph Newgarden. Joseph Newgarden is not in the championship picture. He's going to just be out there trying to get a win. You're going to have Pato O'Ward that's going to be out there in his Chevrolet, going to be a contender for the win. And of course, Alex Palou could be a contender for the win too. Alex Palou, really, he could be in a situation where he just knows, hey, I'm in the top 5. I'm just going to stay here because at the end of the day, I'm getting closer and closer to the championship, especially if Kyle Kirkwood's behind me. Christian Lundgaard, he's going to need to have like the best oval weekend of his career. And then David Malukas, I just get a sense that he's going to finish second or third in at least one of the races, Kobe. But then it's going to be Alex Palou, especially if he finishes the races and he's in the top 5. I think the championship might be wrapped up by the time we finish the Milwaukee weekend.
You're for sure. Like we were saying, in the previous answer, it's gonna be really hard. Try to top Alex Palou despite an uncharacteristically bad day today. And David Malukas, even if he does go out, and win at least one of the races in Milwaukee, finish on a podium, like you said, I still don't think it's going to be enough at the end of the day for him to get back in the championship contention. I just think it's just a matter of time before him and Christian Lundgaard are more than likely going to be eliminated from the championship. And you talked about Christian Lundgaard needing the best oval day of his career. And unfortunately, ovals is really his Achilles in the NTT IndyCar Series, which is the unfortunate part about Christian Lundgaard. He's obviously an extremely talented driver, but we already know the reason why Aaron McLaren decided to let him go is because he's a relatively weak oval racer. I think that's fair to say at this point of his career that he's not up to par on the ovals like the McLaren team had wanted to see. And this is coming to Milwaukee Mile and knowing how Christian has done on the ovals in his career. I'm sure it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence that he's going to be able to close the gap in the championship and try to have an outside chance going to Laguna Seca. So I think for on Christian's part and David Malukas that it's going to be extremely hard for them to get back in the fight. I think it's just a matter of when, to get mathematically eliminated. I think at best we go to Laguna Seca with Alex Palou and Kyle Kirkwood as the only two that can win this year's championship because it's gonna be an uphill battle for Malukas and Lundgaard, especially Lundgaard, given how oval tracks are not his area of strength. And now just looking at what happened this weekend as a whole, we know this year with the celebration of America's 250th birthday, we saw this event come together. We saw this event come together relatively quickly in the last few months. 250 miles, a long grilling street course race, longest street course race in IndyCar history, and it was a big turnout of fans in attendance. I think I saw reports where Bud Denker, the president of Penske Entertainment, said that over 200,000 people attended the Freedom 250 Grand Prix, which is an impressive number, and we saw a lot of media as well. So this event was in the spotlight, and actually, talking to people, we had talked about how the Indianapolis 500 is obviously the premier crown jewel event on the IndyCar schedule, and usually, the second crown jewel is Long Beach. But I think for this year, especially if this is the only edition of the Freedom 250 Grand Prix, I think the Freedom 250 Grand Prix is probably the second crown jewel event, on the schedule this year over the Grand Prix of Long Beach, despite its long history because of all the attention that this event brought. And we did hear, Joe, that this would more than likely be a one-time thing, single year event, once in a lifetime IndyCar race that will never happen again since it's a part of the 250th celebration. but leaving the weekend, we've heard the officials from Penske Entertainment and the U.S. government, they're leaving the door open of bringing this back on a multi-year deal, on potentially a 5-year deal to try to keep IndyCar in the nation's capital, and they're basically leaving the door open of never say never, right? So overall, Joe, do you think this event was a success? And
Overall, I would say it looks like a huge success when it comes to, you had such a huge turnout, the track, as basic as it is, the visuals of racing with the Capitol building there, all these landmarks of Washington, D.C.'s, the museums. It was a stunning spectacle. The racing itself, I don't know if the 250 miles made it where it seemed like there was a lot of patient racing in the beginning part. I mean, really, those 2 cautions for the debris changed the dynamic of the race. I think if we didn't have those 2, we may have had a really long green flag period. But just the fact after that second caution is when we started seeing the more aggressive strategies, restart crashes. It became what we anticipate from a street car race for IndyCar. So overall, I think it would be a huge success. Overall, I would say I would be open to the idea of seeing it come back to Washington, D.C. Especially this is something where, to have a race there in D.C. in this area, there's a lot of people that could get there using the subway system, so it doesn't have to be traffic. And again, this is one of those deals of bringing IndyCar to the audience. You're not racing somewhere like Nashville Super Speedway, which is outside the Nashville metro area. You're in an area similar to Portland where people could get there through mass transit. It's in the city limits. These events are good for IndyCar. And honestly, one idea I've been thinking of, Kobe, is like if for some reason they can't make Washington, D.C. work next year, well, maybe just have a round where, okay, IndyCar's working with a city somewhere for one race where, hey, this might be a 1-year deal, but we're bringing IndyCar to the streets of a new city so you can all see what we're about, get some fan exposure. Of course, we're just coming off the Markham race weekend where everyone will point to that and say, that's the risk you play. If that street course is not ready on time, it's going to give you a really bad look. But in the case of DC, I think they really excelled it, and it seemed like the event was a success. I wouldn't want another 250-mile race. Let's make it a little shorter, just because it's not I don't feel like we need to have the 251 if we come back next year. Cut it down because I think that might give us a little bit more better racing.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I wanted to note compared to last week, at least the track was ready on time, right? So that was the big thing. And I believe the track was ready to go by Wednesday, a full 3 days early before you actually needed it. So that was absolutely fantastic to see the Penske Entertainment folks make sure, and the U.S. government working together hand in hand and make sure that we did not have a repeat of Markham where we couldn't get cars on track. Like it would have been a disaster. This was scheduled to be a 2-day event, since DC is such a busy city. And it would have been really bad, say you don't get the track ready by Saturday and then you get a 1-day show on Sunday where you have to have a quick practice in the morning, a qualifying, you go race. And, that wouldn't give you the full IndyCar experience. But I thought the event was, pretty cool. Like you say, Joe, it was quite the spectacle. It was so cool looking at all the different, photos that come out of this race weekend. Nice to see the Indy cars roaring down the downtown city streets of Washington, D.C., specifically Pennsylvania Avenue. And then in the background, you can see the U.S. Capitol building, just really, really cool. Seeing them driving by the National Archives, the Smithsonian. It was, then you can see the Washington Monument as well. It's just something, that was just incredible to see from a spectacle point of view. And I'm also happy to see that it was absolutely packed all weekend on Saturday and Sunday. A lot of people, experiencing their very first IndyCar race and that race weekend. And after seeing IndyCar in person for the first time, I wonder how many people who have never seen an IndyCar race in person before, never seen IndyCar in general, or never been to a motorsports event before. I wonder how many of those folks are now going to become IndyCar fans, that they're going to decide, hey, now I'm going to follow this series religiously and get into IndyCar. And I think that was really one of the big purposes of, being a part of America's 250th celebration, to try to expose IndyCar to a brand new audience. And obviously we're not going to know the returns of that for a long time, but if they're able to convert some of these people into being IndyCar fans, it'll be a huge win for the series, especially, since this event was, free to get into. And they also had, some other things for people to do. And it seemed like it was an event that, went off flawlessly without any major issues. So I guess I got to commend Bud Denker, the president of Penske Entertainment, for putting this together, because, Joe, we don't know when it comes to these street races, when they're going to a new city for the very first time, it takes like 1 to 2 years of planning. This took a few months of planning. Like, we didn't even know this event was going to happen until this year. Yeah, like, it was a very late add to the calendar, because so many things can go wrong. And it's crazy, because some of these cities, they have 12, 16 months or even longer to prepare for the street race. And we saw Markham, they had like 13-ish months to prepare for their event. Washington, D.C. had about 7 to 8 months to prepare for this race. And for Washington, D.C. to do this, got to give a kudos to the city, because, like I say, it's the nation's capital. It's an extremely busy place. So even shutting down just 2 days, it's not necessarily the best scenario for the city, but they were able to make it work. And if it was a one-time thing, I'll be okay, because it was something, because it was certainly something special to see. But if they're able to turn it into an event where we go every year, I think that would be really nice. But like you were saying, Joe, if it comes back next year, or let's say every other year, since it won't be America's 250 anymore, I don't think it needs to be a 250-mile event. I think they could shave off 50 miles, make it a 200-mile event, because we've seen street course races, be that long. So I don't think that would be an issue. If we just shaved off 50 miles from an event, it'd be a lot shorter, and maybe see a greater sense of urgency. And regarding to the on-track product, I'll admit, it wasn't necessarily the best outside of restarts. I know Markham kind of spoiled us the previous week, because that track put on some amazing race on Washington, D.C. You saw some moves here or there, but it wasn't really anything spectacular. All in all, I'd be open to it coming back in the future if that happens.
Yeah, if it came back in the future, I think it'll be a pretty good, well-attended race. And like you said, to come together that quickly, because I know there was a lot of people, including myself, that were skeptical, like, okay, they just announced this new late addition to the schedule. Are they going to have the time to prepare and do everything to get this racetrack ready on the public streets? And yeah, to have it done early for a 2-day race. I mean, the nice part, if it is a shorter race distance the following year, well, that just means more time to ensure the streets are reopened for Monday morning, when all the commuters and everybody are coming back to work in DC. So overall, yeah, very impressed with what they've done to get this event working, and to see, I believe it was the mayor of Washington, D.C. that gave the command to start the engines. I mean, see the city there, the federal government, IndyCar working together and ensuring a good, successful event. That's really good to see for a series that seems to sometimes have some really bad luck.
Yeah, and actually the mayor of DC, I just want to say drivers to your cars. It was someone else who actually gave the command, forgot who it was. But yeah, one thing I also wanted to note, that the reason why I was saying that this is probably, that this, or at least for this year, that this was probably IndyCar's, second crown jewel event on the calendar, and then Long Beach third. And I know this sounds crazy, because Long Beach has been a staple on the for a very long time. We call it the American Monaco, because in many regards the on-track product is kind of like Monaco, because it can be really difficult to overtake on the Long Beach city streets. But the fact that so much effort, and money was put into this event, and so much, and a lot of promotion. And we always criticize IndyCar about its marketing or lack thereof, but they went all out to market this event, to the absolute fullest. And it really showed with Fox, because the Fox crew, you'd think they were covering the Indy 500, because they had the extended pre-race show. You had Chris Myers, Danica Patrick, Elio Castroneves doing the pre and the post-race stuff, and then you had driver intros with Alan Bestwick, reading off the drivers' names. And that's something that happens at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And then you had the pomp and circumstance during the pre-race ceremonies. It was just something that felt like it gave that big event feel, and that's exactly what it was. That they made this a very big deal. And if we can't go back to Washington D.C., it makes you wonder, where can Penske Entertainment and Fox take the series next? Like we were saying, Joe, they could partner, with another city somewhere else in the United States, or even potentially go international. I know that's been in talks for a longest time now, and we haven't had an international race in a long time in IndyCar, outside of just going across the border into Canada. We've heard Mexico many times, but unfortunately for Paddle Award fans out there south of the border, it really seems like Mexico might be dead in the water, as much as I'd hate that. But it seems like, based on reporting, that IndyCar is looking at other venues to potentially go to. I know the latest country is like Colombia down in South America, which will be really interesting. And then another name we've heard is the Catalunya circuit, Barcelona, where Formula One has raced at for many years, to potentially go there next year or the year after that, to celebrate a potentially soon to be 5-time IndyCar champion Alex Palou in his home country. So IndyCar is seemingly trying to go to all these new markets, all across the country and world, and potentially, grow the series and the fan base at all. But I'm glad this year that they were able to be in the Mid-Atlantic region, because that's been a region that's lacked IndyCar races over the years. And I think when IndyCar looks at this entire weekend as a whole, that they can look at it as a great success, because nothing went wrong based off what we could tell. And now we're going to close the IndyCar and go to the world of Formula One, who returned to action after its annual summer break with the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. And this is the last Dutch Grand Prix planned for a while. And unfortunately for his home driver, Max Verstappen crashed out at the end. It ended on lap 1 for him. He had a hard crash coming onto the front straight on the banking. We saw Verstappen hit the white line, then his Red Bull went up the banking into the wall hard and came back across the track. And Joe, this really looked like an oval crash that we would see often in the United States, particularly, in IndyCar on the ovals. So at the start of this race, do you think the track was a little too damp? And were you surprised that Verstappen was the one who crashed out?
It was a surprise to see that Verstappen was the driver that did get caught up and then crashed out because of this. Max Verstappen, we've all seen the videos of him sideways at Brazil, saving the car under wet conditions. The talks of his car control and how he has the car set up to his liking allows him to be working with a car that making the best of it. And even when the car's not that good, he still manages to bring out the best. So to see him get caught up and then go crashing hard, that was a big surprise. And I think even to him himself as well, as he said, he felt like he saw the dry patch coming, thought he was going to accelerate, but just a little too soon. And that caught him off guard. Considering how damp that part of the track was, especially since we have banking here at Zandvoort, I was sort of surprised that they didn't either A, mandate, intermediate tires, because we've seen how with the intermediate tires in the past, you can keep running, and then as they wear out, keep going, and then when the track's much more dry, start switching to slicks. Or B, just wait a little longer, or maybe just ensure, hey, we got a drier surface on that bank corner. Because that was a very scary incident to see him go up into the wall. And then unlike Silverstone or other tracks where you go crash into the wall and usually there's some gravel runoff room where you could then come to a stop and you're away from the racing surface, that wall on the banking just put him right towards the bottom as the field is coming around. This could have been a really big crash, a scary situation. And of course, we saw Gabriel Borratello get spun in that same corner, and Nico Hülkenberg almost hit him. So overall, this is something where I feel like, I know we're not coming back to it next year, so maybe it's just more a moot point. But if they were to come back or just reconsider, any other track, hey, we do have a good racing groove or something, because in the case where you have walls and banking, this is the kind of accidents you can have. And I think it could have been a little bit more on the preventable side, and we would have had still a Verstappen racing if we had everyone on the intermediate tires. or just waited a little longer to start the race.
Yeah, a really scary situation there for Max Verstappen. Thankfully, the rest of the Formula One field were minding their P's and Q's and being alert of what was going on. And I believe it was Formula One. They even released um, on some audio from the radio as soon as the big crash happened. You had multiple drivers saying, "Is Max okay? Is he all right?" Like that was a big one. Yeah, so they would make sure they were paying attention in a situation like that. If someone wasn't been paying attention, that could have been a really bad accident. But yeah, really crazy how it reminds you of the oval crash you see in an IndyCar race on an oval. But just the opposite direction, right? Because Max spun and hit the wall on this side, where the car, the left side tires, it will be going in the opposite direction, and then you was back into the wall and slide down the track. Max is, basically just did the opposite here. We know Zandvoort is a unique racetrack, especially when they did this reconfiguration where you have a bank curve, during sector 1, I believe, and then you have one in sector 3 at the very end to make this track, really stand out compared to all the rest. But thankfully, nobody was injured, and I also hope Max feels better because he said he was battling the flu over the weekend. And I do wonder, Joe, if him potentially not feeling well. Actually, I ask you this as a follow-up. Do you think Max, potentially not feeling well, played a role in this crash, or you think it was just, track conditions?
I mean, it could have, because we know he said he wasn't exactly feeling 100%. So, I mean, especially when you're talking about F1 car, such pressures, a fraction of a second in your reaction time can make or break it. So maybe that could be part of the issue, was just that fraction off, lost the car and just was unable to do anything with it. The track conditions, it didn't help the situation. I mean, and the tires situation as well too. But I mean, that is sort of the key about Formula One and what these drivers are. They're athletes, they're pilots. They are on the edge of control, working with a car that is just about out of control, puts their bodies through so much. So they have to be in the top physical shape. When you're not feeling well, even if you are performing still at a high level, you just might not be 100%. So that could be a good point, Kobe, that maybe just his illness took a little bit off Max Verstappen's performance.
Yeah, for real, and also, I hope Max will take care of himself because after seeing what happened to Kyle Busch in May, kind of get worried when you have a driver who is out there racing unwell, because we now know how quickly it can go terribly wrong. But yeah, maybe it was a mix of the damp track conditions and Max not being on his A game because he wasn't feeling particularly his best on this weekend. But all in all, happy everything out okay and nobody was injured from this crash. And the big battle today was between Kimi Antonelli and Lando Norris, who led at the start, but lost it on the restart after the red flag. Antonelli had it, and then lost it to Norris, who went on to win, making it the third consecutive year McLaren has had a driver win at Zandvoort. Now Antonelli has a 59-point lead over Mercedes teammate George Russell, who won the sprint race on Saturday. Joe, the Dutch Grand Prix was brought back in 2021 as Verstappen became a global icon in the championship battle with Lewis Hamilton, and also as Formula One's massive growth started to explode, with everyone going on Netflix to watch Drive to Survive. But now Zandvoort is off the calendar for 2027 and beyond, after the promoter decided not to renew the contract. But for all of you people who love Zandvoort, while it may not be on the Formula One calendar, it's not going away, because you'll get to enjoy next season in FIA Formula E, as that series is now going to become the main show at Zandvoort for the 2027 season. But we know Formula One is still growing, but one of his biggest stars, Max Verstappen, doesn't have a home race now after signing a multi-year extension in the last few days to stay with Red Bull, I believe, through the 2030 season, if I remember correctly. So do you think F1 made a mistake by not doing everything in its power to keep the Dutch Grand Prix on the schedule? I know Max's mother is Belgian, I believe, so I guess he could have a home Grand Prix on the schedule, I guess. Never mind, Spa's gone too, so I guess he doesn't have one.
Yeah, I mean, no Spa. I mean, really, the Austrian Grand Prix, you see a big collection of fans at the Red Bull Ring. But I feel like this is sort of the drawback of how F1 management is going about with these races. I know F1's growing, the demand is there, and you got promoters that are going to shell out the funds to bring F1 to their racetrack. And a lot of times that involves the government getting involved in it as well, too, sponsoring it. When it comes to this race, I feel like this is the one opportunity to say this is Max Verstappen's home race. The biggest driver, really, along up there with Lewis Hamilton. Of course, Lewis Hamilton, you see the fans come out for him, Lando Norris, George Russell, you will even say, at Silverstone. Italy, they're coming out in droves for Ferrari. It's a big deal when you have a home country race for the driver, for the team. And I feel this is a big missed opportunity. Now, granted, yeah, Red Bull Ring, assuming that's going to be there, you're going to have a lot of Max Verstappen fans there. But this circuit, I mean, to have it brought back in 2021 and then 2027 is going to be off. And part of it is because, hey, just the fees of it, they decided not to renew. I think this is an opportunity for F1 to say, hey, well, let's make a deal happen because you guys are going to have a big crowd showing up because of Max Verstappen. We know that's going to be the case. So I really feel like this is a missed opportunity by F1. I think it just sort of shows, in my opinion, F1's, the way they manage, I know they're trying to get the best deal possible for them and the series. But to the point where a race like this, you got all the Max Verstappen fans coming out. Spa, another track where fans love it, and that's going to be out because there's other races that are putting up more funds and then maybe producing all right races. I just feel like, this is something I think F1 really should revisit and reconsider because this race, I mean, it was a good battle between Lando Norris, Kimi Antonelli, and overall, the surprise of Max Verstappen crashing out, that caught everyone by surprise. But this was overall, I think, a solid race.
Yeah, for sure. And it's unfortunate, another great racetrack on the F1 calendar, is going to be gone at least temporarily, or maybe we'll see it back on the schedule again someday in the future once they're able to find a promoter that's able to withstand, the demands it takes to put on a Formula One event. But I certainly think it's a mistake to lose this track off the calendar because it's a track that produced some racing. And I believe, and also produced great racing in the past for the support series on Formula 2 and Formula 3, which unfortunately, were not in action this weekend as Zandvoort. It was one of the classic racetracks in Europe, and I just don't understand why F1 feels like it's best to, take this one off the calendar. I can think of other tracks on the F1 schedule that should probably be removed, but that's a conversation for an entirely new day because I get F1 wants to, take the circus around the world and go to different places and all of that. But at what cost, right? At the cost of, a great track like Zandvoort, and also now one of your biggest stars doesn't have a home race now, and that's quite a shame, that Max Verstappen, won't be able to race in the Netherlands again anytime soon. And like you're talking about growth in the series, Joe, and I didn't really understand one of the comments that the F1 president Stefano Domenicali made in recent days. He was responding to people who continue to criticize the new regulations, and Autosport put out the quote from Domenicali when he was asked about people who are not happy with the direction of Formula One, especially, like the battery and energy management. Domenicali said that there are diehard motorsport fans who talk about clipping during that Formula One weekend, but he said there are also be many who think of a clip as something to put in your hair. So kind of tone deaf in my opinion that he's not really taking people seriously, the fans, the drivers who are not happy with the direction of F1. And to their credit, they are making changes in the next few years to try to, take away some of this super clipping that's, caused so much frustrations in and outside the cockpit. But I certainly think, that beyond losing Zandvoort in 2027, there's a lot of issues that Formula One will have to solve moving forward to, get the sport in a much better place. And ignoring your problems doesn't make it go away.
Yeah, ignoring the problems does not make it go away at all. And of course, Formula One will be following them all year long. Let's switch over to the Repco Supercar Series. They were in Queensland, and after falling into a slump, essentially, we saw Triple Eight Red Bull Ample Racing is officially back in contention. While Brody Kosecki took the race 1 victory at Queensland Raceway, the talk of the weekend was Will Brown and Brock Feeney. Starting with Brown on grid tonight, I know Kobe, everyone, they discussed his season-long struggles and how Triple Eight discovered that an incorrect air restrictor limited Brown's performance until this weekend at Queensland. Race 2, Brown earned his big breakthrough and emotional win, his first supercar victory in 378 days. Brown brought the air restrictor in question onto the podium and drank champagne out of it. The 2024 series champion was back on his bubbly self, admitting that he had unexpectedly struggled this year and made him lose himself in the process, and openly wonder if he still had the talent to get the job done. Well, on the personal side, Triple Eight brought back former Pinride Racing Team principal David Palou, who soon began serving as the lead engineer on Brown's number 888 car. As a result, Andrew Edwards, Brown's current engineer, will be promoted to head of performance at Triple Eight Racing. So, Kobe, seeing how big this was for Will Brown, with the points race set coming after the 2 Enduro Cup rounds, should Will Brown be taken seriously as a championship threat when the finals begin?
What did Joey Logano say after he won at Richmond last weekend? Don't let the boys get hot. And I think it's safe to say that Triple Eight have gotten hot, and Will Brown is probably one of the hottest drivers in the series right now from a performance perspective. Because we all know this year has been very disappointing for Brown and his number 4 team. That they know that they could have been closer to Brock Feeney and all those other races before they discovered this, the incorrect air restrictor inside the engine. So, like I said last time around, Will Brown's been driving with an anchor all season until now, and we finally saw at Queensland Raceway and qualifying in the race that him and Brock Feeney are pretty much neck to neck in terms of performance, which is what we expected all along, right? This the Will Brown we saw this weekend at Queensland Raceway was the version of Brown that won the Supercars Championship a couple of years ago, and Will even admitted, like you say, Joe, he admitted himself and like, hey, maybe I'm not that guy anymore. Maybe I'm not deserving of this ride at AAA. Maybe I'm not the guy that can go out here compete for wins, championships, and podiums anymore. But it turns out it really was an issue out of Will's control, and he was actually been handicapped from showing his full potential. And now, since his car is up to par with all the others, we see what Will Brown can do, that he is still a top driver in the Repco Supercars Championship, and he can go out there and compete for wins, championships, and podiums on a given weekend. And knowing that this version of Will Brown is back, I think it's scary for the rest of the competition. I know Will Brown, because of what happened early in the season before now, he's on the back end of the finals field right now. Obviously, he's not in any threat of being, eliminated from the finals at this point. But once the points reset, I think it's game on, and Will Brown could shoot up the standings now that he's on equal footing with his teammate Brock Feeney. And I think Will, if he gets through the Enduro Cup, has 2 good races, at the Bend Motorsport Park, and then at the Bathurst 1000, and then the final start. If he goes to those and performs extremely well, I really think that he could potentially sneak in as a championship contender. Because the bubbly, laughing Will Brown is the type of Will Brown the competition don't want to see. Because as you notice, Joe, when he's been at the track before this weekend, he hasn't been the Will Brown we've seen in the pack. He's always laughing, smiling, joking around, and he actually looked very depressed early on in the season. There was like nothing for him to laugh and smile about, just a look of frustration. And we finally saw Will Brown return to form, and it's going to be really interesting to see if he can keep this momentum moving forward. And I think Triple Eight is also positioned themselves to really to get their grip on this year's championship battle, especially with the restructuring on the personnel side, as you mentioned. It was very interesting to see them announce that David Cauchy is going to be coming back with the team. We all know he helped, shape the Penrite Racing team into what it is today with Matt Payne and Kai Allen. So he helped build up that team, and now he's going back to where he was before at Triple Eight, as the lead engineer. Will Brown, as Andrew Edwards, who's been Brown's engineer there, he's going to be leading the entire engineering department. moving forward. So it seemed like AAA is getting all the right people in the right places at the right time.
Putting the right people in the right places makes a huge difference when it comes to motorsports, and for AAA racing to start having that all come together right now, that has to be a warning shot to everyone in the Repco Supercar Series. Now, entering the weekend at Queensland, Matt Payne had one hand on the Sprint Cup title. He started off the race weekend with 2 poles, a podium, a 6th place finish. But in race 3, Payne suffered a loss of power with an engine issue that put him in the garage and out of the race. This ultimately cost Payne the Sprint Cup, which went to race 3 winner Brock Feeney in a huge change that Kobe, I have to ask, was this the missed opportunity for Payne? And does the momentum now shift back into favor of Brock Feeney?
Yeah, this is absolutely a missed opportunity for Payne, because I remember after we talked after the last Supercars race, we basically said that Matt Payne was going into Queensland, went one hand on the Sprint Cup Championship in the first finals berth of the 2020 Supercar season. And Matt Payne, he obviously had the single lap speed in qualifying. We saw that with him taking the first 2 poles of the weekend. But once we got to the race, he just didn't have the long run speed to compete with the others up there. That as soon as we got into a run, he just did not. He didn't have it to go toe to toe with the Will Browns, the Brody Kostekis, and the Brock Feeneys of the world. So next time we go on the racetrack on Matt Payne, he's gonna have to. Him and his team are gonna have to dig deep and try to unlock that long-term race speed, because he was surely lacking that at Queensland Raceway. Because in supercars, most of the time, if you're a pole setter, you're more than likely gonna win, right? And Matt Payne had not one but 2 poles and failed to capitalize. I feel like one of those 2 poles should have at least converted into a race win. But for him to come empty-handed after starting the weekend so strong has to be a major disappointment, because if you have gotten the max points and not had the issue, obviously in race 3, we could be talking about a totally completely different story right now, because the Sprint Cup title was Penrite Racing's to win, and they ended up losing it, in an unfortunate fashion, when his engine decided to die on him. And now I think the favor is, I think the momentum is obviously going to be going back in the favor of Brock Feeney. We know outside of Will Brown's issue, Triple Eight, they've been having a down summer, I guess, from their perspective, like a down winter, right? Since they're on the opposite side of the war, where they haven't been bad, but they also haven't been great either, because AAA, they're used to greatness. To them, being good is not good enough, right? So AAA, they've just been good. They haven't been great. And now after this weekend at Queensland, I can happily say that they're great again. And I think that they're going to use the momentum, bringing Cauchy back, moving Andrew Edwards to a new role, and then Will Brown return to form. I think team morale is going to be extremely high right now for the Jamie Whincup led operation as we get into the endurance season.
Endurance season is going to be coming up, and we're going to be following all of the Repco Supercar Series action as it happens. Now, of course, endurance racing, let's talk about IMSA Kobe. The IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship held its annual GT-only race at Virginia International Raceway, and we saw a ton of action. GTD Pro, number 9 Fat Motorsports, Lamborghini Tamarillo, GT3 of Andrea Caldarella, and Sandy Mitchell led from flag to flag, earning the overall win in the Michelin GT Challenge. Meanwhile, a penalty for avoidable contact decided the GTD class winner as a number 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin GT3 of Tom Gamble was penalized for avoidable contact. As a result, the number 57 winner of Racing Mercedes AMG GT3 of Philip Ellis and Russell Ward took the class honors. IMSA will return to action on September 20th at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. Kobe, I know also in this race, I have to ask you, there was some big impacts as well too, and some upset drivers as well.
Yeah. Once again, driving standards are calling the question, right? Yeah. It's really weird, because like the drivers are racing each other very aggressively, and race control, they're trying to toe the line and say, hey, you can race each other aggressively, but if you do something egregious, that we're going to pop you with the penalty. And that happened once again today. It was unfortunate, the situation that happened at the end when Tom Gamble and Philip Ellis towards the end there was end up costing the number 27 not just a chance to finish on a podium or the race win, but it also ended up costing Gamble's co-driver Dudu Barrichello in the GTD championship race, because before that he would be within striking distance of taking the championship points lead with a good race in Indianapolis coming up, but with that penalty that dropped the 27 back in the standings. Barrichello, he's still in the championship fight in GTD, but he lost some really valuable points that may end up coming back to bite him at the end of the year. And even on lap 1, Joe, we saw a massive crash for Corvette factory driver Alexander Sims. I don't remember who was in the car at the time, and it was the Rexy Porsche number 77 AO Racing Porsche. Might have been Harry King, could be wrong, but even though King and Nick Tandy share that car, but whoever's in the Rexy Porsche at the time, hit Alexander Sims, and I think it was going through like one of the exit section at VIR, and then the number 3 Corvette had a massive off, slammed the tire barriers hard, shot the entire car up into the air. And I'm really happy to see Alexander Sims get out of that car, because usually when you crash out a track like VIR, it's a really big impact. I've seen drivers, taken away on stretchers at this racetrack, because it is an old school, unforgiving racetrack, and nobody crashes soft at VIR. If you crash, it's going to be a big one. And that was huge for Alexander Sims. And then we saw the Rexy Porsche later on in the day knock the number 14 Vassar Sullivan Lexus off the track as well. So it was not a good day for Rexy at all on the racetrack, and others as well. And we're just going to continue, Joe, having this conversation in IMSA, be like, how hard can you race, without it being over the line? IMSA doesn't. This is like, no offense, to the series across the pond, its sister series, which is, sanctioned by the ACO, but IMSA doesn't want to be like the World Endurance Championship, right? Because the World Endurance Championship, they basically have the same driver etiquette as in Formula One. We see some good WC races, as time goes on, but at the same time, you don't see that level of aggression in that racing series, because they operate from, I guess, the European perspective, where you give a lot of space. You don't trade pain and have door-to-door racing like they do in IMSA. Because we all know, Joe, when it comes to racing culture, the American and European style are way different. That I don't think the IMSA fans will want to see, ACO style rules in the championship over here, because you won't see the hard-nosed race anymore. You'll see drivers given a lot of room. And then it may end up hurting the on-track product. But right now, it's a real struggle right now between driver conduct on track and IMSA, doing its best to try to officiate this.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the officiating, the driving standards, and how it all is going to be playing out. Of course, IMSA competition, lots of fun to watch. With that said, we are just about out of time. So let's get to our shining moment.
Yeah, it's time for a great one shining moment from this racing weekend. Let us know down in the chat whether you're watching live or on replay. What's the one thing that stood out to you, whether it's from NASCAR and New Hampshire, IndyCar in Washington, D.C., Formula One at Zandvoort, IMSA at Virginia International Raceway, or Supercars at Queensland Raceway? What's your top moment from the weekend? I'll start with you, Joe. What's your great one shining moment?
My shining moment comes from the NASCAR Cup Series race at New Hampshire, and it's going to go to Josh Berry. Josh Berry has had a very difficult season, and really since that win in Las Vegas, I, as well as many others, thought, okay, he could really elevate this team to that next level. Strong runs here and there, but just could never bring those results and the finishes that a lot of people anticipated. This year was announced early on, he's out of that ride. And you look at where he was in the standing, below the top 29, 30, it was just not working out. But they've been putting together some strong runs, some top 10 finishes, and then today, he was aggressive. He was going for the lead. He was putting distance. This looked like a Josh Berry Wood Brothers team we haven't seen before. So I think this team is starting to figure it out. I think Josh Berry is starting to figure it out. It's unfortunate. The timing might be too little too late, but it has to feel good for Josh Berry to have such a strong run at New Hampshire, and we're going to be following to see in case they could do a repeat at Daytona.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Josh Berry was my shining moment last time around, so I'm going to do different. Although I think Berry did have a notable run, I'm going to give my shining moment to a driver that we've criticized quite a bit over the years on our show. Got to give it to Nolan Siegel, right? Nolan Siegel had a really great race on the streets of Washington D.C. 6th place finish today, and we know it was certainly a grueling race, 250 miles, some chaos and carnage here and there, and he avoided it all. Ended up getting a really strong result. And looking at Nolan Siegel's prospects for next season, given the amount of seats left, it's extremely unlikely that he stays in IndyCar. But but just because you are at an IndyCar one year, that doesn't mean you can't come back in the future. Like I look at Roman Grosjean. He was with Junko's Hollinger Racing and spent the whole 2025 season on the sidelines, and then came back in 2026. So if Nolan Siegel can finish this year strong, get some good results for Arrow McLaren, he can put this on his resume. Maybe not for 2027, but the 2028 season when we have a brand new car. And he could also potentially impress some car owners in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, World Endurance Championship, that be like, hey, I'm a great driver. I'm available for hire, and I do bring some funding. So we could potentially see Nolan Siegel, find somewhere to race next season before a potential IndyCar return. We know it's been a struggle for him, and it really seems like, that Nolan Siegel is at this point in his young IndyCar career that he's starting to slowly figure it out, right? I mean, he may not be able to live up to the standards of driving for Arrow McLaren and what that brand means, but he's starting to show that, hey, maybe he is an IndyCar caliber driver who can be here for the foreseeable future. And it's kind of the same situation with Josh Berry, Joe, you just mentioned, where it looks like a while, things are not going well, and then the team decides to move in a different direction, and then all of a sudden, and it's like, hey, you can do this, you can be at this level and get the results. So all in all, great day for Josh Berry and Nolan Siegel.
Yeah, great day for both of them. And of course, we're going to be busy. We got the grid ranking coming up. Alex Palou, no longer the leader. Kimi Antonelli retook the lead. You're going to be seeing that across social media at Grid Network TV. And of course, then we got Grid Rising, Matt, Tanner. They'll be recapping everything from the race weekend from NASCAR Mexico. We have the lower series, including ARCA. So a lot of racing for them to cover. And then Wednesday, Grid Tonight. Kobe will be on the air, and we'll be recapping all the latest motorsports news from around the world. And a big thank you to our Patreon investors, on the show, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, Nico, Adam, Mango, and Patrick. Let's make that list bigger. Click on the link or become a YouTube paid membership, and we'll thank you on the air every time we're going on the air. For Kobe and for Matt, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time.